What makes a good villain? In any form of media, I believe a truly good villain mirrors the hero of that story, reflecting their own flaws and desires in a more twisted way. We've seen the sociopaths, the psychopaths, the charming ones, and even some where the root of their motivations are solely based on envy. The bad guys have to have a motivation compelling enough to believe in. They have to be a believable threat, and arguably the most important, there has to be complexities that define their personality, so you believe that they are more than a stereotypical, one-dimensional bad guy. Video games in particular have been able to craft some exceptional antagonists, from William Carver to Pagan Min to Micah Bell, all carefully constructed villains that have the benefit of being written for a medium like no other. But so rarely do I see games with dual antagonists. This is not to say that I've never seen a game that has more than one bad guy you have to overcome, but I mean villains actually having a cohesive, mutual relationship benefiting from the same thing. The reason this is rarely seen is because no two people really have the same goal. I mean, in the beginning they can recognize that they share a common goal, but should push come to shove, one will always be willing to go the extra mile. With that being said, Uncharted! I know I've been gone a while, my segue game is a bit off, but bear with me that this is what you clicked on the video for. The Uncharted games are some of the most revered games of all time, praised for its exceptional narrative, crazy action set pieces, and its incredible character writing. Nate, Sully, and Elena's relationships are some of the biggest highlights of every Uncharted game. Their banter and chemistry is undeniable. I only wish I could say the same for a lot of the game's villains. You see, there's a few constants in Uncharted games. You can expect traversal, you can expect puzzles, and you can expect a treasure hunt. But you can also expect there to be two main bad guys who absolutely despise Nathan Drake for one reason or another. So, while ironically working on another Uncharted themed video, I got to thinking, which Uncharted game has the best villain duo? And instead of just thinking about it, I wanted to break it down. We'll be looking at the chemistry of the duo and the moral ambiguity of each character in said duo, should there be any, as well as how intimidating they actually are, and most importantly, take a look at their motivation and how it relates to their partner and compares to Drake's. Without further ado, let's take a dive into some of the most ruthless, narcissistic, and envious Uncharted villains to see if we can figure out which duo would have a harder time completing It Takes Two. Also, before we begin, if it wasn't already obvious, I'm only talking about the Nathan Drake Uncharted games, excluding Golden Abyss, so we won't be discussing General Roberto or Asav from The Lost Legacy. Starting with the one that started it all, and a few of you already know how I feel about this game. Dude, this game, it is so hard to believe it got a sequel, But nevertheless, this game's dastardly duo are Gabriel Roman and a Toc Navarro, a British crime lord and a Spanish mercenary who have a pretty strong, albeit lackluster introduction once Nate finds the first solid clue to El Dorado. They get jumped by the two and a handful of mercenaries, and Gabriel explains to Nate that Sully owes him a lot of money, so he's here to collect, and he takes the treasure map as a substitute for payment, but not without teaching a lesson, so he threatens to shoot Drake but ends up shooting Sully instead. Now, anyone who's played this game knows that Sully doesn't die, but it's a pretty decent introduction to a bad guy. It made him feel like a real threat that he could just shoot and kill one of our companions at any given point, right after giving some long, pretentious monologue, and it's clear from the get-go that Navarro is his right-hand man, not the other way around. Gabriel is more calm, gun-holstered and even-tempered, even doing things like offering Nate a hand to get out of the water and apologizing for the inconvenience, while Navarro does all the mean mugging and pistol whipping, even without the behest of Roman. Now, unfortunately, I think it only goes downhill from here. When really examining the relationships between the antagonists, I wanted to make comparisons to actual symbiotic relations, like mutualism, which is when two organisms benefit from working together, or commensalism, which is when one organism benefits and the other is unaffected. Well, if I had to describe Navarro and Roman's relationship, it would probably be dog and abusive dog owner. I'm being so for real when I say the way Roman talks to Navarro is crazy, and sometimes, no, all the times unwarranted. Like, the type of disrespect that you dish out just because you can. What makes this especially odd is it's implied that Roman actually saved Navarro's life from the slums of Timbuktu, and yet he has him on some kind of payroll? Like, imagine if Batman saw Jason Todd stealing tires from his Batmobile, and instead of becoming his mentor, taking him under his wing and making him Robin, he just pays him Monopoly money to clean the Batcave while chastising him every chance he gets. That was a weird analogy, but you get my point. And even after having his intelligence and competence questioned several times throughout the game, Navarro still shows crazy signs of loyalty, willing to even shoot Eddie Raja on sight the moment he reaches for his weapon. But later we get moments like Elena barely getting free from his grip, and Roman basically calls him a bitch for not being able to control her.
Nate, get out of there before...
Elena! Leave her alone!
Navarro, if you can't maintain control over a small girl, it won't happen again.
It's unclear how long Navarro had this plan. For those who don't know or don't remember, the golden statue of El Dorado is cursed, and Navarro seemingly knows this and tells Roman to open it, which causes him to get cursed, and Navarro blasts him between the eyes with no hesitation. The classic student betraying the master. I imagine this could have been more impactful if there wasn't 5 minutes left in the game, or if, Roman and Navarro were better written characters, but now we have Navarro at the helm, and he's the one in charge now. He's in the driver's seat. Dude, jeez, doesn't get any easier, does it? It's already so hard to talk about Drake's fortune, and these two do not make it any easier. They have no real connection to Nate other than Sully, and their motives are only driven by greed. Both of them are pretty one-dimensional, but Roman especially. Just slapping a British accent on an old white guy isn't that scary anymore, even in 2007. And the relationship between these two is abysmal. They could have pushed the "I saved you from the slums" narrative a lot more, because upon finishing the game, you'll find that Navarro was only Roman's first in command, not his right-hand man, and there is a stark difference. These two are bad for the sake of being bad. Roman dies by someone he thought he could trust, and Navarro dies by drowning by the very same curse he used to betray his partner. I guess there are fates worse than death. Like replaying Uncharted Drake's Fortune. Moving on to Among Thieves, we have Harry Flynn and Zoran Lazarevich. In this game, the goal is finding the lost city of Shambhala, or Shangri-La, the place of the Tree of Life and the Chintamani Stone. Sounds great, except your competition is a madman. I guess I'll start with Flynn, because what makes him so unique as this game's villain is he actually starts off as our ally. He's charming, funny, and he's able to easily convince Nate that they can find Marco Polo's lost fleet by doing this one job. Once the job is done, Flynn turns the gun on Nate and gets him arrested, and for the life of me, I can't think of a reason why Flynn would want to do that to Nate.
Until then, he can't know about us.
I do think Flynn's betrayal was a decently told story beat. It may have looked like it came out of nowhere, but that's exactly what betrayal feels like. Nate trusted him, so the player trusted him, and now we feel like the one with the gun being pointed at us. Plus, having it happen so early in the game reinforces the full phrase of the game's title: no honor among thieves. Plus, it turns out that Flynn didn't do it strictly out of greed or his own self-interest, but because behind Nate's back he had made a deal with a Serbian war criminal named Lazarevich, who's obsessed with finding the Chintamani Stone. While Lazarevich may have the strength, manpower, and resources, he doesn't really have the knowledge, and that is where Flynn comes in. Going back to the types of relationships, it seems like both of them are benefiting from each other. While that may look like the case, let me just say these two go together like water and oil. Lazarevich is, and you're not going to believe this, a really bad guy. This man was wanted by NATO for, quote, unspeakable atrocities and massacres to his enemies and civilians. He gained a reputation for being so ruthless that NATO's assassination attempt on his life was a bomb, and he survived. But, fun fact, I'm sure you can guess that attempt is what left his face and body scarred like that. Throughout the game, we see merely glimpses of his ruthless nature, but with this being a rated T game, a lot of stuff can be left up to the imagination. We see him kill some of his own men, one seemingly for misunderstanding and another because Nate decided to use him as a bargaining chip, and then proceeds to threaten to kill Chloe or Elena to strong-arm Nate into giving up the next clue. In this same scene, he calls Genghis Khan, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, and Pol Pot great men for having, quote, the will to do what others would not. Mind you, all the men he just named are some of the most ruthless generals and dictators in history, responsible for the imprisonment, torture, and death of thousands and in some cases, millions of people. This is just a peek into his psyche. Lazarevich is still very much a ruthless killer, which brings me to my only problem with his character, and that's the hero's plot armor. There are a handful of moments in this game where he could have killed Nate, Sully, Elena, and Chloe, and he just doesn't. Now, I'm not rooting for my hero to die, but that is Lazarevich. He absolutely would do that. But instead, he kills Jeff the cameraman?
Away from the temple. Shame.
I know what you guys are thinking. Where's Flynn in all this? Well, the answer to that is being as useless as ever. We see this as a common theme in Uncharted games where the bad guy wants the treasure but doesn't care enough to do research, so they just hire an expert. Roman basically did that with Sully after kidnapping him, and Sam later acts as the Sov's expert in The Lost Legacy. The seeds are planted early on that Flynn can barely read a map, speak another language, or dissect complicated puzzles, which I think is the only reason he even came to Nate in the first place. He knows only about half of what he's talking about, and I think the more impatient Lazarevich becomes with finding Shangri-La, the more impatient he becomes with the expert that's supposed to have gotten him there. By the time they get there, Lazarevich beats Flynn within an inch of his life and leaves him with a live grenade that he instructs him to kill Nate with, but he only ends up killing himself. Lazarevich already knows the power of the Chintamani Stone and doesn't care to share. I'm sure he would have done that same thing to his mother. And once Lazarevich makes it to the Chintamani Stone, he essentially becomes Super Saiyan, which leads to a boss fight, infinitely better than the one in Drake's Fortune and possibly the best in the series. Lazarevich, knowing he lost, still questions the duality of Drake's character, which also mirrors the ludonarrative dissonance of the Uncharted franchise, essentially saying Drake is no better than he is because of all the men he killed just to stop him. He then dies to some pissed off ancient guardians, with his remains being left under the rubble of Shambhala. No doubt, Lazarevich might be the most ruthless villain in the series, but his mistreatment of someone he needs, coupled with Flynn's insufferable need to feel useful, leads to some pretty good story moments. Zorn never really saw Flynn as an equal, which kinda mirrors Gabriel and Navarro, except these two are far better written characters. Well, even when I'm talking about the second game, Drake's Fortune still catches strays. You know what? I'm excited to talk about this one. I've made videos in the past calling it my favorite Uncharted game, and it's the first game in this video where the antagonists, Marlowe and Talbot, are genuine partners, not just someone's expert or first in command. The game practically opens up with these two trying to cut a deal with Nate and Sully, but ultimately still end up robbing them in an alley for Nate's signature ring. It's evident from this alley scene alone that Marlowe is very much entitled and pompous.
I merely want what's mine.
Also, Marlowe is our first woman bad guy. Bad girl. Bad woman. She's the first female antagonist of the Uncharted series. In addition to that, she's up there in age, so you just know she's not going to be in any fist or firefights, which is where her band of goons come in. She's the leader of this underground secret order, and it's constantly flanked by her partner, Talbot, who we'll talk about in a sec. Marlowe is also the first villain who has some history with Drake. Uncharted 3 reveals that Nate, as a young boy in Colombia while working on his skills in vendor thefts and pickpocketing, comes across a young Sully who also happened to have been dating, if not working with Marlowe at the time. She tries to bully a young Drake into giving her the ring, and when he refuses, she slaps him. A child, and then tries to slap him again had Sully not stopped her, and then sends armed men after him, leading to one of them holding Nate at gunpoint and would have killed him had it not been for, again, Sully. Now, as important as Marlowe is, as I mentioned earlier, she's more of a ringleader. She delegates a lot of the dirty work, well, dirtier work, to Talbot. Now, Talbot is on the surface your stereotypical asshole villain, who also happens to be British, which makes him sound just as pretentious as Roman. The first thing he does is leave Nate and Sully to burn in a chateau when he could have easily shot both of them. But that doesn't even compare to him drugging Cutter, telling him to not trust Drake, and then disappearing. I shit you not, Talbot really pulled the Homer Simpson meme and just vanished. This causes Cutter to not only try and kill Nate, but he almost gets himself killed when Sully tries to intervene. And shortly after, you get a scene where both Marlowe and Talbot torment Cutter, leaving him stranded on a burning structure. They lit, by the way, forcing him to jump off and break his leg, essentially taking him out for the rest of the game. Once that part of the game is done, we travel to Yemen, and of course Marlowe and Talbot are already there. Eventually Nate gets drugged with something similar to what happened to Cutter and wakes up sitting across from Marlowe and Talbot, and that's when the mind games start. One of the things I really love about Marlowe's character is she relies on psychological torture. Nate says to her, "You don't know me," and she just laughs, puts on reading glasses, and starts reading him his whole life, stuff that Uncharted 4 would confirm to be true. Things like his mother committing suicide, his father putting him in an orphanage, and even Nathan Drake not being his real name. This comes before she tries to pit Nate against Sully, claiming he never rescued him and only doomed him to this life. This is where Marlowe excels as a character. She knows she has the advantage, and she deliberately decided to meet in public because she knows Nate can't show out because he's not there legally. A classic Marlowe power move. Marlowe then hires a pirate named Ramses to kidnap Drake and ultimately kill him. This just goes to show, even if it isn't Talbot, she'll have someone do the work for her. The next time we see Marlowe and Talbot is at the Lost City in the middle of the Rub al Khali desert, where Talbot ends up shooting and killing Sully. I know it was all a hallucination and Sully lives, but this fake out death in this game was done far better than the one in the first game. I think that's because I believe that is something they would do. We know how vindictive Marlowe can be, and she has history with Sullivan, but hates Nate. Makes me wish the first one never happened, because by the third game we already love Sully. The two of them stop Marlowe from stealing the vessel of brass, which contains the hallucinogenic agent that possesses the water, but not before Talbot spots Nate trying to flank him, exaggerating just how aware he is, and he tries to shoot him before being stopped by Sully, taking him down and pushing him into the water to drown. The destruction of their crane also led to the destruction of the city, causing it to fall apart, leading to both parties attempting to make an escape. They all end up trapped in a room filled with quicksand, with Nate and Talbot making an escape and Marlowe drowning. That leads to a terrible boss fight with Talbot that is still infinitely better than the one with Navarro. For Uncharted's first female villain, I think they nailed it with Marlowe. The vindictive old woman trope works especially well with the themes of underground London. Nate already having history with her sets a pretty nice precedent for the animosity between the two, besides, I'm good guy, you bad guy. She threatened to hurt everyone Drake's called family, including Elena, had him kidnapped and drugged more than once. She had goals on bringing society under her thumb with that hallucinogen that they were trying to steal, and for someone not as physically imposing as her, I can see it. Marlowe craves power and clearly sees herself as above everyone else. Oddly enough though, in her death, she screams and even goes Drake to save her while using Sir Francis Drake's ring as bait, questioning if he's even worthy of the Drake name. Talbot, on the other hand, was really great for Marlowe to bounce off of. On top of that, I feel like maybe we should have explored the supernatural part of his character after he just straight up disappeared after drugging Cutter. And honestly, I think that's something that just got scrapped later, because if Marlowe just had some kind of deity that could seamlessly travel from one place in the world to the next, it would be a little too convenient and send the story spiraling downwards. They kept him grounded, and it actually benefits their relationship. Talbot does make mistakes sometimes, and we see him get reprimanded by Marlowe. Not Roman and Navarro level of disrespect, but just enough to remind you who's in charge. When Marlowe dies, Talbot actually becomes enraged and distraught. In that moment of vulnerability, he even pleads with Nate, someone he's tried to kill this whole game, to save her. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing particularly special about Talbot. He's not the worst written bad guy of all the characters on this list, but he is super annoying, and at the end of the day, a follower. Marlowe is in charge. He wants whatever she wants. At least Navarro has some level of, for lack of a better term, individuality to him. no matter how stupid he was. Whoa, Drake's Fortune catches strays 3 games in a row. Can we make it 4? Rafe Adler and Nadine Ross, on paper, are the perfect duo. They benefit from each other, they both have the same enemies, they both share the same goal, and they both trust each other. Until they don't. But I'm getting ahead of myself. During the opening of the game, while Nate and Co are in prison, Rafe is presented to be the money man, and he apparently paid off the warden for them to purposely get there just so they can find a clue to Henry Avery's treasure. Which begs the question, if Rafe already has money, then why does he want the treasure? I hope to answer that question in the next couple of minutes. Also, Nate and Rafe are allies in the early game up until Rafe loses it and kills the prison warden after suggesting they split the take. So we learn a few things. He doesn't like to share, and he's a hothead. Sure, Nate kills people, but never in a cutscene. That's just madness. Oh, and he needs Nate and Sam. Sure, Rafe may have the money and resources, but Nate and Sam have the knowledge. Fast forward to Italy, we are introduced to Nadine via an interaction with Sully. From this interaction alone, we see that Nadine has history with Sully, but doesn't hold a grudge, showing she makes it a point to separate business from personal, something that Rafe can't do. And speaking of Rafe, he's also here, and this interaction with Sully of him slapping his drink out of his hand and making a scene threatening to kill him in front of all the NPCs, it's such a good moment. Rafe confronts him about why he's even there, and when he feels like he's being lied to, his response is violence, and Nadine is forced to check his behavior in front of everyone.
Well, I know when I'm a third wheel. You 2 kids have fun tonight.
Just hold on, Sully. How'd you find out about it?
It? What it is that, Rafe? Nadine, I think your partner here has had too many Bloody Marys.
Cut the bullshit, old man. Now, I don't know how you scammed your way in here, but if you think about bidding on Avery's Cross, I can tell you exactly how you're going to be leaving in a goddamn
Rafe!
fight. Well, you get my point.
Early on too, we see Nadine beat the crap out of Nate, and the fact that she's able to take on a grown man, probably 100 pounds heavier than her, is mad impressive, and a little scary. Nadine brings the muscle to their partnership, and I'm not even just talking about her. She leads a private militia group named Shoreline, whose expeditions are now funded by Rafe. Shortly after in Scotland, we get to see this interesting interaction between Nadine and Rafe. Rafe is opposed to Nadine's men just blowing everything up, and Nadine tries to accommodate by saying her men will just check with him before blowing anything up, which wasn't the point he was trying to make. So there's some miscommunication and tumult brewing between the two. Nadine mentions she wanted to steal the artifact long before Italy, and even accuses Rafe of waiting so he could intentionally draw, spoiler alert, Sam out of hiding. She goes a little further, saying that if they cannot find the treasure her way, then maybe it's time for the two to move on. And while Rafe puts on a sad face, what I find particularly interesting is Nadine places her hand on his face very tenderly and reminds him that it's not personal, hinting at some romantic or at the very least sexual tension between the two, which would be a first in the Uncharted series.
Hey. It's not personal.
Fast forward to Madagascar. Once Nate finds the next clue, it's revealed that Rafe had to pay top dollar to not only track them down, but hack their phones, which gives him an advantage in the whole Avery treasure hunt. Rafe even offers Nate the chance to quit, and he'll forgive and forget for old time's sake. When Nate declines, he reminds him that their phones have GPS and sends men after him, Sully and Sam, making me think the whole forgive and forget thing was bullshit. Fast forward even farther during the scene where it's revealed that Rafe was the one who bailed Sam out of prison. During a standoff, Sam has a gun pointed directly at Nadine's head, and threatens to shoot her, with Rafe even betting her life on it. If it wasn't for Nate's intervention, Sam was about to shoot her, which understandably causes some trust issues between the two. I also see parallels to the scene from Uncharted 2 where Lazarevich just straight up kills one of his own men when Nate has a gun to his head. Only this isn't some random mercenary. This is his partner. Either Rafe doesn't learn from his mistakes and he keeps underestimating the Drakes, or he just sees Nadine as a pawn in his Avery treasure chest game, and neither of them are good answers. Later on in this same scene, when Nadine urges Rafe to end their reunion, he shoots at Nate with the intent to kill him, had it not been for Sam stepping in the way. So, For as monologue-y and narcissistic as he can be, he doesn't make empty threats.
Keep running into dead ends. Why don't you face it, Rafe? You need us.
No, you're right. You're half right. I just need Sam.
Wait, now you're making a mistake.
If we fast forward a little more one final time towards the end of the game, with Avery's treasure found, Nadine and Rafe are kind of at odds. Once Sam steals one of their boats, Rafe insists on going after him and the rest of the treasure, but Nadine quickly opposes it, pointing out the loss of most of her men and the booby traps that reside in the cave. Both logical reasons to cut their losses and leave. She also points out that Rafe didn't really earn the treasure anyway, and once she says this, he slaps the naughty dog shit out of her, and the crazy part isn't even that he slapped her. It's the fact that he slapped her and continued his ranting like nothing just happened. And when Nadine fights back, it is revealed that Rafe had paid off her own men to work for him, saying mercenaries' loyalty is bought, not earned. Which, god damn, Rafe.
Thing that we've done is for nothing.
We have millions in gold right here. I'd say that plus our lives is something.
No wonder so many of your men abandoned you.
Excuse me?
We're on the verge of making history here, and you're willing to just walk off with a pittance, a fraction of what Sam's gonna get from that boat.
If he can walk away from that ship alive, he can have it. Hell, I'd say he's earned it. God knows you didn't.
Now look, we can stand here and insult each other all day, or we can finish what it is that we've done.
Oh, we're finishing it all right.
When the time comes, Nadine understandably turns her back on Rafe. Or should I say, Rafe turned his back on her before she pointed a gun directly at his back before leaving him and Nate to die, making her the only antagonist we talked about to survive to the very end of an Uncharted game. Rafe would go on to die in a sword fight with Nate. Sure, I could go on to talk about the end of Nadine's arc in The Lost Legacy, but she's more of an ally in that game, so it's not entirely relevant. Her inclusion was appreciated and I think generally welcomed by fans. Other than Lazarevich, she's the only other physically imposing villain on this list, being able to take on two grown men at the same time, and she's not one to shy away from conflict, with or without Shoreline. Unlike Rafe, Nadine has no past history with Nate, so every decision she makes doesn't have any ulterior motives. Unlike Rafe, who is vindictive, greedy, and obsessed. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but Rafe is rich. He doesn't need the money. He did it for the glory, so people can remember him. In his sword fight with Nate, he talks about how hearing about Nate's excursions nearly drove him mad, and he even says he shot the guy that told him Nathan Drake is a legend, which sounds like a joke, but knowing Rafe, I could bet Henry Avery's money that it's not. He spent years and years harboring all this pent-up resentment towards Nate and getting betrayed. He feels Nate left him behind, Sam betrayed him after he freed him from prison, and his own partner, often doubted, and at the very end, had a gun to his back. Sure, Rafe is a narcissistic, pretentious psychopath, but it was also evident he was on a slow descent to madness. He didn't even feel August until the very end when he had a sword to Nate's throat, exclaiming he's had everything handed to him on a silver platter. But the treasure? He earned all that by himself. How very earnest of you, Rafe.
I had everything handed to me on a goddamn silver platter.
But not as earnest as the ending of Drake's Fortune. Okay, that one felt a little forced. Across the 4 games, we've seen every villain archetype there is, and all of them were exceptional. Yes, even Roman and Navarro. Doesn't mean they were the best. If it was my personal list, those guys would go on F tier. But honestly, guys, I didn't expect this video to be as long as it is, so I want you guys to help me answer the question, which game has the best power couple? I'm not trying to sway anyone's opinion, but just because it's my favorite of the 4, I gotta go Team Arlo, not Talbot. Guys, holy crap. this was a banger, man. So to put in perspective, this is like the third video I'm recording in a row. I currently am on like vacation. I have a lot of free time, and this video has been sitting on my computer for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and I need to get it out of there. I need to get it off my hard drive and out there to you guys so I can interact with you guys, and hopefully you guys can tell me that you like the video, because I put a lot of time into it, and this is one of my favorite videos to make. Whenever I can go back to make Uncharted videos, I always feel at home, because this game and this series is what my channel was built on. A lot of my early videos were just Uncharted, so whenever I can go back and have a fresh idea like this, it makes me happy, and I put a lot into this, and I never say that at the end of videos, but I really do feel happy about this. I'm really excited to talk about this, and I really do want to know. I thought I would have an answer by the end, but upon me saying that I didn't expect this video to be that long, I genuinely don't have an answer. My personal favorite would be Uncharted 3. Realistically, probably Rafe and Nadine. But I don't know, man. Lazarevich, just him by himself, just has a chance. So I want to know what you guys think. Which villain duo were you guys most intimidated by? Did you enjoy most seeing on screen? Were they the funniest, the scariest, the most intimidating, whatever it may be? Let me know down in the comments below. I read all the comments, I promise. Click, share, and subscribe. I've been talking for so long, I forgot how to end the video. And I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Peace.